Previously, I have reviewed two other Australian work boots, Redback and Rossi. They're also called elastic side boots, or whatever the official title is. Blunnies seems to be the informal one. The main motivation behind these reviews has been in previous Blundstone disappointments that I have had, since the company was bought out in 2007, and it subsequently was made overseas from Australia. I will include an article in the description on their buyout, and yet I find it funny at the same time that the comments all contain dissenting opinions as of the point of this recording. It seems fair to make this a trilogy of footwear to compare to the Blundstones that many used to own and love. Since the three boots here that I have featured are the most often mentioned competitors of Blundstone that also happen to be made in Australia still and of a reasonable price tag. First, I'm going to go with the materials slash design. Compared to the other two companies that I've mentioned, Mongrel uses thinner leather. This all seems to be thick enough for a work boot. You can probably see best here or here. It seems thick enough though for a work boot compared to most flaky garment leather that's used in footwear today, and even many sort of offshore work boots that are still made today. However, I do think that this influences the integrity of the design. For using a fatter outsole and midsole and very good high quality elastic, it seems that the elastic particularly causes the leather to crease around it. It manhandles or manipulates the design, as you can see here, or here, with the creasing that's here. Where was I? It seems that the elastic particularly causes the leather to crease around it, though ultimately I can see why they would use thinner leather though, since your average uninformed consumer is not willing to deal with break-in. And so basically with many work boots especially, you're going to be looking at something like a week to a month of break-in, where you're going to get creasing here, where the footbed or the insole perhaps is going to form to the foot that's wearing it. So the problem is that especially when most boots being bought today, work boots included, are going to last less than a year, anyone that's going to want to go with a week to a month, potentially 10% of their wear time, breaking some footwear in, they're going to discern it as a flaw in the makeup. So the information's not out there, and there's less sort of higher quality, year plus long lasting footwear. So again, I can see why a company would be attracted to selling to an uninformed consumer something that uses thinner leather, at least in comparison to the other ones. I am very happy with the elastic here and the insole so far. It's as high of quality as the other ones that I've looked at. But so just so you know, the three most parts that are likely to fail or degrade or what have you is going to be the midsole here, the elastic here, or this wait, I think I just mixed them up. Insole, the elastic, or the midsole, excuse me. Contrary to what many people might think, it's going to be the outsole, the part that's touching the ground that you stand on. More or less, you're going to have some part of this foam degrading, which I'll go into down here. Regardless, though, elastic, it can, even though really high quality like this can handle a lot of stretching, here, especially when your foot's going into it. Something like what I said, where if it's a lot of the fit here, it even goes down to here, let's say, this is going to eventually stretch out and fail. So the this insole that I've had, it doesn't have the sort of typical quality insole or memory foam bed problems in regards to humid overheating. For anyone that's bought or tested a memory foam bed, let's say at first, at first it seems very nice. It seems like it goes with your form, but as you actually sleep in it the first time, it's sort of African weather. Excuse me. Like Redback, the insole uses a porous structure, as you can see with the holes here. The magically allows for airflow. Also because of its wider toe box here, I believe there's more room for air to sit around and adjust to the temperature, like how wearing a pair of baggy clothes allows for more air to be trapped and heat or cool accordingly. My example of this is you might see people in more arid weather, at least traditionally, wear sort of flowy white garments. The flowy garments being that it allows for lots of airflow for your body to sort of adjust the temperature that it wishes to have. Obviously, if it's sweating, it allows for more wicking, and that's what the airflow is helpful for. Again, the porous part of the insole helps definitely. And I think you would know this if you've had a particularly overheating pair of shoes. In other words, it is warmer when it needs to be during cooler weather, and vice versa. I have often found with polyurethane soles, or with the midsole here, as well as rubber outsole boots, often cause the part here to freeze the foot during cooler weather. Sort of my example I would give you is a rock, where a rock would be very cool during cooler weather, and it would take a significantly longer time to heat up. So it's less likely to insulate you or adapt to your body's temperature during extreme weather conditions. The outsole has, just so you know, in comparison to like the Redback or something, this will do a lot finer of a job, at least in my experience. The outsole has a much more flat and wide surface compared to Redback, and I'm going to give you a comparison here. This means that compared to the deep treads of the Redback boot, it is less likely to have stones stuck in the cracks, albeit it is still possible with the spongy outsoles of this nature. The Redback feels like a sort of a quarter toy claw machine in how easily it can pick up gravel. One can definitely tell when one is lodged in as well, since there will be a clap to each step on a harder surface, making people think that you're wearing clogs or some sort of dancing shoes, particularly on wood, rock, or marble. And just so you know here, the Redback, they both have sort of a thinner tread and a deeper tread. As you can see, the Redback here only has it about here, but everywhere else around the circle here, around the front here, all this entire part here, it is all extremely capable, the deeper tread, of picking up rocks. Whereas with this one, you really only have it in the back here, and then the front sort of diagonal part here. But all this thinner part's much less likely to pick it up than the Redbacks. The outsole on the Mongrel is also wider to the other Australian work boots. There is a lot of midsole, at least in the width, and the outsole clumped together. This should, in theory, distribute shock a bit better at the expense of having a slightly fatter looking boot. My sort of example I would give you is if you think about a pair of like high heels with a very thin heel, you're going to have this one part that sort of has a seismic shock that it sends up the leg and distributes it all the way up to your knee and your back, which can cause problems later. It is worth mentioning here as well, as in my other videos, that like other Australian boots that I have reviewed, that the midsole uses polyurethane, as I've mentioned, and the outsole uses thermoplastic polyurethane, shortens to TPU. Again, I don't know if the TPU has the same effect as polyurethane, the midsole, but this is what I mentioned about how the midsole can be of a bigger problem than the outsole and be the first thing to degrade. Polyurethane goes under a process called hydrolysis, where it breaks down on its own, and it's accelerated, especially with disuse. So make sure that you use any footwear with this material once every week, preferably, to a month, to slow that process of breaking down. While this, with most leather footwear, it is generally recommended to sort of rotate and have two pairs. Excuse me. So even though with most leather footwear it's recommended to rotate and breathe and essentially buy two of the same pair of footwear so that it can have a 24-hour period to rest and get water down and cause it not to rot, essentially. Here with this boot, you don't actually have a leather footbed, which is one of the more often parts to rot. Uh, and so with the fact that there's no leather footbed, and 99% of users are not going to replace the outsole once it dies, meaning I would still more often recommend that you just buy one pair and use it till you lose it, so that you don't go under the effects of hydrolysis. Uh, with the lifespan that I would imagine these boots go under, with 1 to 3 plus years from what I've read in my own experience. Depending on use and abuse of one's personal gait, something like this could last many more years. I have seen a pair of redbacks last up to 10 years, but I would consider that its maximum without refurbishing the elastic and or the outsole. So again, replacing this, getting it resold here, replacing this, and at some point, for perhaps the $100 that you might buy a pair of these with, what's the point of just keeping it when you can just buy a new pair? So with most other leather footwear, especially over $100, I'd be more inclined to just refurbishing things, getting it resold. It'll be cheaper, more likely than not, but with these, unless you're working, let's say, more than 8 hours, and you're not giving it, let's say, like 16 hours. So let's say you're going to an 8-hour job, and then you're going to wear 8 more hours while you're at home. Then maybe I might recommend rotating, but or if you work, a 10-12 hour shift. But if you're only going to put on 18 hours a day or 8 hours a day, I think 16 hours, is enough for the material to breathe, at least during its lifespan. Also, make sure you buy from a reputable retailer, since a pair of boots lost in the warehouse too long, especially something that's made in Australia or perhaps, let's say, made overseas and is stuck in a US warehouse with lots of models, with lots of sizes, that it might be on the shelves for, even up to a year. So, a pair that's lost in the warehouse too long might mean that you receive a pair already in the stages of hydrolysis or breaking down. As much as I have been bloody bashing in the past, I am guessing distribution might be the biggest problem with the complaints of the overseas made boots. With how many boots that they make, it's, probably more than every Australian work boot combines now. The variety of boots that Blundstone is putting out, and its incredibly wide distribution network across the globe, essentially. I've seen them sold in Europe, they're sold in the US, they're sold in Canada, sold in Australia. I'm sure they're sold in Asia and elsewhere as well. So I'm guessing that's going to be the biggest problem on why people buy a pair of boots here, and within a week or a month, or if they've stuck it in their closet for 6 months, that it comes out and this part is just torn apart from the rest of the boot. So again, the hydrolysis is the most important thing, so make sure you buy from a good distributor. And also I think it's worth adding that if you look at how many models Mongrel does offer compared to Redback or Rossi, which only seems to have about 10 models, let's say, or 10 or 20, Mongrel offers about 40 or 50. This means that the plus side that you will have, that you're finding a lot of footwear, and you can buy something that's more fashion to the type of work that you do. It's nice to see that they have models, for example, with an external toe cap, something that covers the toe up here, since it's the part of the leather that's most often abused. I will also caution, though, that things like cloth liners and zippers that I've seen more often on their models are also parts that are going to break down initially in footwear if it isn't made or sewn well. Also note that if they're distributing more models, there's more likely that those models might be stuck in the warehouse for longer periods, causing hydrolysis. Anyways, to have talked your ear off about the hydrolysis, I'm going to go on to fit. And that is also potentially as confusing as the hydrolysis issue, or perhaps problematic. In regards to fit, I am going to do something different here and discuss the 4 points of fit here. The toe box here, the instep, let's say arch, sort of right here. And again, note that there's no elastic here that's going to influence this part of the fit. Since it's probably the most important, the instep to the heel cup, so here to sort of here, and the ankle. I think those are the 4 major parts of footwear fit, let's say. Note first, I generally do not recommend a fitted toe box here, since it is known to cause toe deformation, like essentially squeezing the toes together and causing them to be malformed. This boot has the best toe box fit yet that I've tried on an Australian pull-on, without looking like a clown shoe or a shoe in which the left and the right foot are unidentifiable. I am most comfortable out of the 3 tested Redback, Rossi, and this Mongrel, recommending it to size down with. So, just so you know, pulling out the Redback again, my point is that the big toe tends, is here. It tends to be here. And, same thing for here. But you could see that this one is more of an acorn, I would say, or a uniform sort of front, whereas this one's more curved to the natural way of the foot, let's say. So the problem here is that you're more likely to receive some form of squishing of your big toe here with the Redback boot, which would not be an ergonomic design. But at the same time, obviously with a wider toe box, you're going to get more of that clown size fit, or something that just looks like, I don't know, clown shoe. I'm just going to leave it at that. Or, a clog perhaps, or something that the style crowd might not approve of. So again, best toe box fit with the Mongrel, and as a result, I'm more comfortable with the sizing down, as you'll see with the sizing issue coming up with this pair of boots compared to something like Redback. Alright, where am I at? So, the boot does a fine job of securing the instep of the foot. So again, this part right here, where a boot like this should be able to enforce without scrunching the toes. I wish it was slightly more of a firm fit here in the instep, since this is the only ergonomically securing fastener of the footwear without abusing the elastic sides. What I mean by that is this part here is going to use the elastic to secure the fit. It's not going to be secure. In other words, the ankle is the same way. You're going to be using this elastic and stretching it. So the only other part besides this instep fit right here, right here, is going to be the toe box. But you don't want to, just have the toes scrunched together here and cause deformation. So it does a fine job. It does a good job where it should be able to enforce without scrunching the toes. I do wish it was slightly firmer, to restate. The fit in the heel is much more loose. So basically here, as well as sort of the width of the heel here, holding the ankle down, and it's sort of a secure, I believe it's called a heel box, I'm not really sure. But at this point, I expect elastic-sided boots to function more like clogs, where there is some degree of heel slip. So basically with each step, your heel is going to be more likely to move up and down. It is a double-edged sword to balance an ankle socket. I believe that's the more correct term. Fit as many, and at the same time, fit as many customers as possible, and allowed the foot to easily slide in the boots without abrasion being caused on the ankle or the heel too. Also causing something like, let's say, a pair of socks to break down earlier, because it's constantly causing friction. So again, your foot, I think in these models, is meant to do some form of sliding, or else you'd have to have some sort of custom fit boot that's going to require a lot more money. The arch support on these is very nice, as you can see with the insole right here. So it is the best of these 3 that I have tested. Most stock insoles are a last thought, and here's where I am slightly unsure of whether Mongrel offers 2 models for the same product. It seems like with this one that there's a premium model, which I believe these are, which would most likely influence what insole they put in it. The price difference, though, from what I remember from the memory, the price difference from memory is only about $10. I do not have a separate product to compare of other differences, though, outside of this insole. It is worth mentioning that the arch support may be too intense for someone, like what you would see with somebody that has flat feet. Albeit, as with most insoles, they are user replaceable. For the hydrolysis problem that I've mentioned, I don't know if adding more models to sit on shelves is the best idea. Again, just know that if the insole here is too intense, that you can replace it. As for the ankle fit, as one would expect, even compared to Redback, there's virtually nothing securing the ankle. It's even less so with this one, though, since it's not as tall of a design as the Redback here. I felt little support there, not like it needs it, however, as I mentioned for the design and the heel slip as well, as overly relying on a secure ankle fit may simply reduce the lifespan of the elastic and stretch it out. In a line of work requiring ankle support, I wouldn't use elastic-sided boots anyhow. Okay, on to the sizing and the potential sizing problems mentioned. Like Redback, Australian shoe sizing, and I believe UK shoe sizing as well, only fashions footwear and whole sizes. Their footwear is generally one number size down than the US. Therefore, three things. Only 7, 8, 9, 10, for example, are made the whole sizes, not halves in the same sense. So again, if you're like an 8.5 US, there's no 8.5 in Australian or UK. If you are a 9 US men's, that means you would be an Australian 8 or a UK 8, since you size one down. 3, if you have noticed, the Australian sizes are offered in half sizes. The half size translates to the wider fit of that respective whole number. For example, an 8.5 would be a wide 8. Or I guess in other words, for the US, it's if you're a men's, you would be an 8E width. That would be the wide width. D would be a normal width. So, for example, if I was a 9 wide US men's or a 9E or double E or anything above that, I would order one whole size down in the Australian and get the half number to 8.5. So again, if you're 9 US men's, but you're a wide 9s, you would get an 8.5. The problem this presents is, what if I am a half size in US footwear? And here is the difficult part of recommending whether to size up or down. In most cases, I would generally recommend to size up, since you can always snug up the laces, and at least it provides enough room in the toe box. But since there are no laces here, and the toe box is a wider, more work boot style toe, I feel a more secure fit sizing down to the lower hold number. So I would recommend, if you're in half sizes, to size down. The only exception I would make is if you are planning on wearing very thick socks, or let's say double socks, and you are going to also switch out the insole to something thicker than this. It's the same deal I recommended with the Redback boots. Again, though, I do feel more comfortable recommending the Mongrel and sizing down because of that more ergonomic fit. Always make sure that you use a Brannick device, a measurement device that's used in the US, or you get a professional measurement, as most US shoes are of questionable accuracy, and the foot does swell at the end of the day. So note that if you're going to measure at the end. Overall, I would give this a 4 stars out of 5, as well as with the other boots that I have reviewed, the Redback and Rossi boots. Not perfect, but very good at what they do. I like a lot of what is going on with the Mongrel boot. I do wish the leather was thicker to restate, and I do wish it was a more secure fit. Ironically, I think thicker leather may make the fit around the instep here more snug, where it needs to be. If this was accomplished, added with it being able to last as long as the Redbacks, at least in my experience, last very long, it would get my highest recommendation of the 3. For those interested, in conclusion of this trilogy, so far the order I would recommend the 3 Australian work boots would be Redback at number 1, since I just have had more experience dealing with Redback boots, The ones that I've seen have lasted years. It is easier to find. It is overall a good product. Redback gets my vote for the most durable. But note that this is not an endorsement for Redback's Chinese clones that they make Blue Tongue footwear, as I just have no experience with it. Number 2 would be Mongrel, with which my current experience could only beat Redback if it had a far superior design, just because of how long I've had experience with Redbacks and how long they last. The toe box, again, with these is more ergonomic than Redbacks, and especially with Rossi's. And with the premium insole, again, premium model, it is more comfortable than Redback boots. Again, wish the leather and fit were slightly better. Mongrel, though, wins the comfort ribbon. And then number 3 would be Rossi. Even though I do like Rossi's use of nitrile as well as polyurethanes, I have had too many design problems for their use, including weight and unergonomic toe box being the biggest. Rossi does win the fashion vote, at least, I suppose. I will include a link in the description below of a US cobbler that can replace Blundstone, Redback, Rossi, and Mongrel footwear. If it does so wear out and you would rather keep using the same pair of broken-in footwear, then replace them. This is assuming that the elastic is still in good condition and that you're willing to replace the insole if it breaks down. Also, no company or any individual has paid me for my opinions in this video. Cheers.